I couldn't just skate over what had happened to them. How do you process the things that happened to them in the first movie? And I thought Mason, Finney would be traumatized by this. And then I liked the idea that.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, Jana, how are you?
I'm doing fine, and you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. A pleasure to talk to you, and congratulations on the movie, the second
Thank
one.
you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. So I want to know, like, the idea and the inspiration for this second chapter of the Black Phone.
Well, it started with an email from Joe Hill, who wrote the short story that we adapted for the first film, and he sent me an email saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if in a sequel, the grabber called Finney on a payphone from hell?" And I thought, wow, that's interesting, and it just got me thinking about the idea of, it's kind of like the first movie, but the grabber's the ghost this time. Thought that was a good idea. He also had the idea of what we learned in the movie about the mother and the tie-in of Gwen and Finn's mother to the grabber. I thought that was interesting. I think for me though, the biggest thing was I wasn't that interested in making a sequel until I realized that if I waited, the studio wanted me to make a sequel right away, and they were really pressuring me to do that. And I thought, if I wait and I go make another movie first, preferably a bigger movie, a longer movie that takes like a couple years, then I can let Mason Thames and Madeline McGraw get older, and then I can make a high school movie. And that was the big thing for me, was getting to revisit these characters years later when they're in a different stage of life. The change between middle school and high school is a very big change, and that to me got me excited. I felt like I could make a different kind of movie, and also as a high school horror film, it just felt like it needed to be a scarier and more violent movie.
Yes, yes, it is. I love Madeline's hair. The haircut.
Oh, you know who that was inspired by was the films of Natasha Kinski in the early
Oh,
'80s,
that's
like cat
right.
like cat people. That was, I was looking at a lot of different kinds of hair, and I was like, she would do something different. It would be of the early '80s, but it wouldn't be the popular early '80s hair. And I think it was my wife who first brought me images of Natasha Kinski from the early '80s. I was like, that's it. That's what we're doing.
That's amazing. Because there was a moment there, I have curly hair, but there was a moment that I have a short hair on the 80s,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
just like hers. And I was like, oh my God.
And you were probably an outsider for having that hair, right? Like were not a lot of girls that were doing that, but it was a
Uh-huh.
thing. Yeah, exactly,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly. I love that. So I love Mason and Madeline, both of them. They brought so much for the story, and how was like bringing them to this universe this time around, like older and more, especially Mason's character. He's more, I don't know, older, more aggressive. I can
Well,
say that.
I knew that if I was gonna do this, if I was gonna go and revisit these characters years later with them in that phase of life, that high school phase of life, that I couldn't just skate over what had happened to them. How do you process the things that happened to them in the first movie? And I thought Mason, Finney would be traumatized by this, and then I liked the idea that, he's a quiet, shy kid, and he never really lets it out. He never really expresses to anybody the amount of fear that he felt that stayed with him. And like so many teenage boys, his fear turns to anger and he becomes violent. That's very typical for teenage boys. And then with Madeline, with Gwen's character, I love the idea that she would represent the very common thing with teenage girls, which is feeling awkward and feeling weird and feeling like you don't fit in, feeling like that you're strange somehow. And she's got this beautiful gift and this ability that's very special, but it makes her feel like a freak. And I love the idea of being able to lean into that and let her run toward that in the movie, and run toward her gift and use her gift deliberately and purposefully, and by the end make her peace with it and recognize that this is not a curse. You're not weird. You're beautiful. This is wonderful. This thing, this, have there be healing for Finn, for Gwen, also for Terrence, the father, for that whole family.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. So I need to ask about the mask. I know that you used Jason Baker, and did you use him again? And how was like the process to adapt for the second movie? Because you see a little bit different from the first movie, and this one have like some nuances. I don't know. It's kind of a little different, and I like it. Can you
It,
talk a little bit about it?
well, Tom Savini, who's a legend, is the one who designed the mask for the first movie, and Jason Baker built the mask. And Jason and I spent a lot of time getting the texture right, getting, the color on it right, what material to use. That was all a lot of trial and error. And, but that had been figured out. So I didn't need to use him exactly, but I did make sure that he instructed the Toronto people who were building the masks, on how to do it and use the same mold. So it's basically the same mask. But the one thing I wanted was for there to be some scarring and frost on the mask, that from the grabber being in this frozen hell. And I wanted the coldness of that mask to be visible, and that was added on by our own Toronto based production design team and prop master. They did an amazing job on it, by the way. I loved the uniqueness of the mask in this one.
Yeah, I love that too. That's why I thought that, sorry, I thought that I had worked with Jason, but I'm sorry about this confusion, but I love the way that you
No,
see.
don't get me wrong. He was still involved, but he was, he didn't have to restart over. It was more about he was involved making sure that the mask was made properly to his design, and then the additions to it were things that we added on our own. That's basically how it worked.
Yeah, I love that because you can clearly see like that. The Black Phone is one mask, like very modern, let's say, because it's more nowadays, and this one is more older. And I love it. I love it.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. I want to ask you about the challenges. What was like your biggest challenges on this movie?
I mean, the biggest challenge on this movie was the budget, because we didn't have a lot. It's a bigger movie. It's a much more ambitious movie, and to pull off things like that lake finale sequence is very hard. And we didn't have enough shooting time. My wife Maggie, who's a great director, shot second unit, but she shot probably a third of the material of the movie. She was off shooting as many days as I was shooting, and I was overseeing all that. But she was the only person I trusted to do that. But I think that it was trying to pull off a movie with an incredibly good and unique look. The Super 8 is a real pain in the ass, because it's so messy. Sometimes it doesn't expose well. We had to reshoot several scenes because the Super 8 Super 8 film was so out of focus we couldn't use it. So it was mostly trying to make a movie that probably should have cost $20 or $30 million more for the money that we had. But compromise is your friend, and I think that in some ways, when you're forced to not have enough money to do what you want, you get more creative and you make better choices. So I think it all turned out the way it was supposed to.
Yes. And are we done with this universe, or we're gonna have a number 3, Black Phone 3?
I don't know. When I made the first movie, I didn't have any thoughts about making a sequel, and I think that was important. And I did the same thing on this one. As I made this movie, I never thought about making a third one. What I can tell you is that if there is going to be a third one, it's got to be another unique turn. It has to be a real hard pivot. For me, if I'm going to make a sequel or a prequel or whatever of any kind, I'm only interested in doing that if it can feel like it's got some elements and characters that you love from the original, but fundamentally feels like a brand new movie. That's the only kind of sequel I would ever be interested in making.
Amazing. And are you working in any new projects? Anything that you can mention?
Yes, but nothing that I can mention, unfortunately.
Okay, no, that's okay. I need to ask that, but if you can talk, you can talk. If
That's a
not,
no harm in asking.
amazing. Scott, this is the time that I have with you. I just want to thank you so much for your time. Keep bringing amazing movies to us, to entertain us, to make us think about it, to make us cry, and to make us have
Oh, that's
fun.
wonderful.
Amazing. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. That was a really nice thing to say there at the end. That really warmed my heart. Thank you, Jana.
Thank you so much. Bye. I'll see
All
you on the
right.
next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
If you like to support or continue to support Jana on Camera, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share the videos.